This is Chris with Healthcare Sales 101. And in this Trends in 3, I want to talk about infection control. But infection control is such a huge topic that I really want to drill it down and talk about rail systems and how they are quickly becoming the standard for infection control devices. We are lucky enough to have Gary Schindel from Paladin with us today, Paladin Healthcare. And Gary has been working with healthcare clients for well over 20 years on infection control. So we are pleased to have him here to pick his brain. Gary, thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
You're quite welcome, Chris. Glad to be here.
So tell me, what trends are you seeing when it comes to these infection controls in healthcare?
Well, what we found is that from a number of different standpoints, the use of an equipment management rail has become very popular in the infection control environment. There are several benefits both to the end user in the room, the clinician, to the CFO from a financial standpoint, but more importantly from a use compliance standpoint, being able to put the devices where they are most effectively used. And many times that exact position is not identified until after a construction or renovation project has been completed.
Just to kind of back up a minute for us novices, why would they put this rail system in place as opposed to just mounting them to the walls?
Well, the rail system allows for a couple of advantages. Number one, it doesn't make Swiss cheese out of the owner's new walls. Usually they do, at this point, Corian backsplashes or in some cases other solid surface finishes or even high-style tile, which we've seen in many installations, or a third-party modular casework type design. The traditional means of mounting infection control devices is with a screw gun drilling holes in them, and we call it the Swiss cheese syndrome, because all of a sudden you've punched all these holes into it only for someone to come down later on and say, well, I don't like this here, this should be over here, or that contracts change. Supply chain is always tasked with reducing the cost of operating a hospital, and they will very often negotiate new contracts with sharps container manufacturers and soap and foam partners. So every time they change those containers, they have to swap them out. And if you're not putting those devices on a rail, you then have to patch and paste. Then you've pretty much destroyed the investment and the intent of the design for those areas.
And so it sounds like what it really brings is flexibility to that environment at this level of infection control.
Yeah, no question. And there are certainly infection control benefits as well. I mean, we use the saying that if you can't paint behind it, you can't clean behind it.
Well, this seems like a no-brainer. So what kind of objections would a client have with this kind of solution?
Well, we shake our heads very often in that, a lot of times there's the mindset of, well, we've done it this way this long and, we really don't care. There's also the contractor mindset where it's not in our budget to include a rail system, so we're just going to stick it to the wall. An owner has to recognize is that the investment on the front end, and this is, by the way, where the trend in healthcare design and construction is going. People are now looking more at life cycle cost reduction rather than strictly at first cost. And, smart hospitals are realizing that, a little bit more investment on the front end in something like a rail system will pay off, in spades in generally less than a year. We have a lot of examples where within 12 months of occupancy, the rail is free and has actually saved them money. Not just in material costs, but also in revenue loss prevention, because you're not having to shut rooms down to patch and paste holes in your drywall.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. So when a dealer is out selling this, what mistakes are you seeing that they make when they position these solutions?
Very often we still find the dealers out there looking at the pretty solution rather than the practical solution, and we are all about finding the balance to this. A true equipment management rail system, like the Paladin, for example, we can match a Wilson Art laminate to any casework solution, so we can try to blend the rail into the backdrop. We are very sensitive to the need of a high-style environment. However, and I do come from a clinical background, we are more focused on listening to the nursing teams and giving the users and the clients that we all serve the optimal solution at the end of the day that they can use over the life cycle of this new unit. And the recommendation has come down from the Center for Health Design. They have actually published an evidence-based design recommendation calling very specifically for the use of a rail for infection control devices. So, this is an industry trend.
That's great, and I'll be sure to put a link to that document. Well, Gary, thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, Chris. Glad to be here. Look forward to some feedback.